Deep inside a frozen forest in East Prussia, inside Hitler's heavily guarded headquarters known as the Wolf's Lair, a man did the unthinkable. He told Adolf Hitler the truth. The date was February 7th, 1942. Germany had failed to capture Moscow. The Eastern Front was collapsing, and Hitler wanted only good news. But one man could not lie anymore. His name was Fritz Todt, the engineer behind the Autobahn, the architect of Nazi fortresses, the man who held the entire German war machine together. And that night, he slammed his report on Hitler's desk and said, "We cannot win this war. Make peace while we still can." Hitler stared at him in shock. The next morning, Fritz Todt was dead. This is the mysterious death of Hitler's most important engineer, and the truth has been buried for over 80 years. Fritz Todt was not a general. He was not a soldier. But without him, Hitler's armies could not move. Todt was a brilliant engineer. He constructed the Autobahn. He built the Siegfried Line, Germany's massive defense wall. He oversaw the Atlantic Wall, the huge coastal fortifications stretching from France to Norway. And he commanded Organisation Todt, a construction empire of nearly 1.4 million workers, including forced laborers. By 1941, Todt was the man Hitler relied on to build the physical backbone of the regime. But with that responsibility came an uncomfortable truth only he could see. Germany could not win. By the winter of 1941, Todt was exhausted. He saw factories running out of steel, roads in Russia turning to deep mud, frozen engines, broken supply lines, a Red Army that refused to collapse. Everyone around Hitler kept promising victory, but Todt had numbers, real numbers, and they all pointed in the same direction. On the night of February 7th, 1942, Todt entered Hitler's personal conference bunker. The room was dim, cold. Maps of the Eastern Front stretched across the table. Todt placed his report down and said the words no one else dared to speak. "Führer, our resources are drowning on the Eastern Front. We must seek peace with Stalin, otherwise everything collapses." Silence filled the room. Hitler's face hardened. No one else spoke. Not Goering, not Bormann, not Albert Speer. Todt bowed stiffly and left. That night he shared a drink with Speer and said, "I'm flying back to Berlin tomorrow morning. I've had enough." It would be the final decision of his life. The next morning, February 8th, the Wolf's Lair airfield was drowning in fog. Gray sky, gray snow, no horizon, no visibility. An aircraft waited on the runway. A Heinkel HE-111, a twin-engine bomber converted into a transport. Hitler had forbidden high-ranking officials from flying in twin-engine planes. Too dangerous. He required them to fly in safer, three-engined aircraft. But Todt insisted. He was impatient and frustrated. He wanted to leave immediately. Hitler's adjutant tried to remind him of the regulation. Todt dismissed it, and Hitler allowed him to board anyway. Todt climbed aboard the Heinkel. Beside him sat his secretary. In the cockpit was a young Luftwaffe pilot, barely experienced with this aircraft. A test flight had been done earlier that morning. No issues were found. At 8:35 a.m., the engines roared. The plane lifted off the runway. It rose, wobbled, and began an early turn. Seconds later, it slammed into the ground and exploded. Fritz Todt was dead. For more than 80 years, people have debated what actually happened. Here are the four major theories. Theory 1. Pilot error. The official investigation concluded that the weather was catastrophic. Fog so thick that sky and snow looked identical. No visible horizon. The pilot attempted a turn at low altitude, lost orientation, and crashed. Field Marshal Milch concluded, the sky and snow were equally gray. Human error is the only explanation. This theory matches the weather conditions and the crash pattern, but there are other possibilities. Theory 2. An accidental bomb detonation. Hitler's personal pilot, Hans Bauer, believed something far stranger. German military aircraft carried a 1-kilogram self-destruct bomb under the pilot's seat, activated by a cord. Its purpose was to destroy the aircraft if it crashed behind enemy lines. Bauer believed Todt's foot may have pulled the cord by accident, starting the timer. Eyewitnesses saw a strange blue flame in the wreckage, consistent with explosives. But this aircraft did not have that bomb installed, unless it was added secretly. And that leads to the darkest theory of all. Theory 3. Assassination. Fritz Todt had enemies, real enemies, inside Hitler's inner circle. First, Hermann Göring. He wanted Todt's ministry and felt his influence slipping. Second, Martin Bormann. He disliked Todt's growing independence. Third, the SS and the SD. Admiral Canaris claimed that 2 British explosive devices had gone missing before the crash. Fourth, Hitler himself. Todt's suggestion of peace cut deep into Hitler's pride. And finally, Albert Speer. He arrived at the Wolf's Lair by chance the day before. He was scheduled to fly with Todt, but overslept and missed the flight. Within hours of the crash, Hitler appointed Speer as Todt's successor. Suspicious, convenient, but never proven. Theory 4. Mechanical failure. Perhaps a valve, a fuel line, or a hydraulic component failed. But the aircraft had completed a test flight earlier that morning with no problems, and the crash pattern does not match an engine failure. So what really happened? Before investigators finished their work, the detailed crash report vanished. After the war, it was simply gone, destroyed, lost, or buried. And without it, the truth remains hidden. We know 3 things for certain. First, Todt confronted Hitler about the realities of the war. Second, he died the very next morning. Third, the man who benefited the most, Albert Speer, rose to one of the most powerful positions in Nazi Germany. Was it an accident? A mistake? A mechanical failure? Or something far more sinister? We may never know. Because whatever happened on that fog-covered runway at the Wolf's Lair remains buried beneath the snow, along with the truth of Fritz Todt's final flight. If you want to keep uncovering the stories that were never meant to be found, the arguments behind closed doors, the disappearances no one explained, and the men history tried to erase, make sure you subscribe. We dig into the files they wanted destroyed, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.